What's going on, everybody? Welcome on in to the Matt Lombardo Show presented by Heavy.com. I am Heavy.com NFL insider Matt Lombardo. Great to have you here. Great to have you along for the ride on the Matt Lombardo Show. This is going to be an exciting podcast. It's a project that I've really been looking forward to. Each and every week, we're going to get into the biggest storylines across the NFL, talk to the biggest names in the sport, current players, former players, executives, decision makers. We're going to give out some awards as well that I'm really excited about, including, not to be mistook for the Superbowl trophy, the Lombardi Trophy, we will award the Lombardo Trophy each and every week. We'll get into that a little bit later on. And our first guest, I couldn't be more excited to welcome into the show, is Las Vegas Raiders All-Pro wide receiver Davante Adams. He'll be joining us on behalf of Tide. We'll get his thoughts on the Raiders season, where they go from here, how Las Vegas turns it around, and just what is going on to his success, what has driven his success in the past with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, and what he hopes to build now with Derek Carr and the Raiders. We're joined now by Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams, who joins us on behalf of Tide and their efforts to bust the myth that lucky jerseys don't need to be washed and try to convince fans to wash their lucky jerseys too. Davante, thanks for taking the time. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How you doing, Will?
Hey, great to have you here. Really looking forward to the conversation, especially after this past Sunday in the game you had. You really broke out, 109 receiving yards. The offense really seemed to be firing on all cylinders against a division rival. What was the spark for you guys? What helped you turn the corner on Sunday afternoon?
I think just the accountability and some of the things that were acknowledged earlier in the week. It was a different intentionality brought to practice. I think everybody understood that we're a good team. Our record obviously didn't and still doesn't quite yet reflect that, but we got a great roster, so we just got to figure out whatever it is as far as are we playing hard enough and this and that. And I think that when everybody started to get a little bit more real and locked in on their assignments and discipline, and that's the result you'll get. We'll be able to go out there and get wins against good teams. And like I said before, that's the standard, and that's how we expect to operate moving forward.
And you've obviously been to the postseason a number of times, one of the most accomplished receivers in the NFL. Were you part of those conversations about accountability? Was there something that maybe you saw that you wanted to bring up to your teammates and get everybody to reinforce that buy-in?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it was my, we had a captain's meeting when we got back from the game that we lost on the road. And then we ended up having a few more meetings with some coaches and had opportunity to talk to the team and basically just address a few things that, not calling anybody out per se, but just calling on everybody, to just bring a little bit more as far as whether it's the time that you're spending on studying or helping somebody else or, just being more locked in the moment and, in these games so that we can acknowledge the reasons why we were losing so that we could, go out there and be able to change it and beat a team that's a really solid team. And, that they want to label it as a must-win game or whatever. We feel like they're all must-win games. So that's how we want to attack it and have that mentality moving forward.
And obviously a catalyst to a lot of your success in Green Bay was the connection you had with Aaron Rodgers, right? And you've made no secret since you arrived in Las Vegas with the Raiders, your affinity for Derek Carr, how much you care about him as a person, as a player, how great he is as a quarterback. What are some of the things that make both Aaron and Derek elite? Because you can make a case that both of those guys are top 10 or so quarterbacks in the league today. Carr with a lot of upside from here. What about those two guys makes them so special?
I mean, they're two guys that expect a lot from themselves, and they're not satisfied with anything less than a A+ great effort out there, and they want greatness every time they hit the field. And obviously, one is a 4-time MVP, Super Bowl winning quarterback, and another one is a slightly younger, extremely accomplished, but hasn't really had some of the acknowledgments or the accolades that Aaron had, but has shown that throughout the time he's been in the league, he's probably had some of the most adversity from any other quarterback that I know of, let alone that I know personally. So to see what he's done and to see the mentality that he still has, and similar to what I was just saying about the intentionality. I mean, both guys bring everything they got every single day, and you see the result in the way that they play.
And take me through those first couple moments, whether it's running routes over the summertime before camp, first couple practices. Was there a moment where you realized that you were locked in, that you were dialed in with Derek Carr, and it was like riding a bike again from when you guys were together at Fresno?
Yeah, I mean, we started throwing immediately. I mean, it was like 2 days after I signed here. I was already out in Vegas, and we were getting to it, getting to know Darren, getting to know Hunter, Foster Moreau, DJ Turner. We all out there throwing and getting ready for a big season. And just based off of the little time that we spent on the field within those few days, I could tell that we were. And the other big thing is that people don't realize for the first 6 years of our career, we were throwing together every single offseason. We lived really close by each other. And then when the Raiders moved to Vegas was when we stopped throwing. So we only had about a year or two in between. So we were able to kind of use some of that stuff we were doing in the offseason to just propel us into this year. And still getting more adjusted now, but I like where we're at as a connection.
And you've also played for two really bright offensive minds. Of course, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay has that reputation. Josh McDaniels and everything that he accomplished with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick before coming to the Raiders, and now as your head coach. What are some similarities between those guys? What sets them apart as just brilliant offensive minds?
I mean, the amount of time that they put into it is crazy. I mean, I've never seen head coaches that put as much into the film and the details of what they do, and they're just, obsessed with what they do, and that's why they've had so much success. I mean, Matt obviously won 13 games 3 years in a row, and Josh 6 Super Bowls or so. And that type of stuff doesn't just happen, no matter what team you play for, or what's on the back of your jersey, or just because it doesn't happen just because you're a nice guy. So it has to be a lot of work that's put into that, and the results show in the amount of games they can win.
And you brought up the other receivers in that room, and you guys have a ton of weapons. And one of the guys who's really stepping up that has made an immediate impact this year, kind of grown into a contributing role right out of training camp, is Mack Hollins. Tell me what has driven Mack Hollins' emergence this year and what he means to you guys' offense.
Well, Mack is a guy that he's been waiting on this opportunity for a while. I even told him when I first met him that I didn't realize that he was as skilled a receiver as what he is, just based off of, on the teams he's been on in the past. He's been used as more of a special teams guy, and didn't get as many, opportunities at wideout. I think the most catches he ever had was like 15 or 16 in a season. And, over the past 3 games or whatever, he's probably got more than that. So I knew based off of the first, when we were in OTAs, that he was going to be able to have a pretty solid impact on this team. And, I mean, his attitude and his personality is infectious, and it's something that we definitely need on this team. That's why he became a captain and was voted as such by his teammates, is because he does it right. He's just an animal in the weight room and all around. So he's a great team to have.
Yeah, and Davante, no matter who I talk to around the league, whether it's scouts, executives, coaches, you're top of mind when it comes to people talking about the most complete receivers in the NFL, one of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in the league. But, take Davante Adams and put him on a shelf, right? I mean, I'm sure you watch football. I'm sure you watch the Monday night game, the Thursday night game, the league, receivers. If Davante Adams were picking the top 3 route runners in the league today, who comes top of mind for you?
Man, picking top 3 anything in the league today, especially at wideout, is almost impossible. Wow, that's a great question.
Who's one? Give me one. Who's the guy that you watch and you're like, man, that guy's next level?
I mean, obviously you got Cooper Kupp. He's a great route runner. Justin Jefferson. A lot of these guys, Stephon Diggs. I mean, Diggs is one of the first people I think of as far as just clean routes. Another guy people forget about a lot, Calvin Ridley. He's top 3.
Yeah.
As far as if you watch the tape and you really know what you're looking at, Calvin Ridley's the top 3 route runner, and maybe top 5 receiver in the league. And Keenan Allen, one of my good friends. He's probably one of the ones that I've watched the most tape of. And, I mean, that dates back to when I was in my senior year in high school. I was watching him at Cal, so that's kind of what got our connection going early on. So that's probably some of the guys right there in no particular order. I'd probably say Keenan first if I had to start with something. Keenan, Calvin, and Coop.
It's a great list. And, Cooper Kupp now has that Super Bowl ring on his finger. Let's go to the flip side of that. Who's the corner in this league that you might have had a big game against or you caught a touchdown against where you take so much pride in beating him? Who's the guy that stands out on that list for you?
Well, I take pride in beating everybody. So it really
my man.
Everybody I line up across from, I don't care who you are, I take pride in that matchup regardless. So
love it.
But if I face somebody, honestly, it's a good timing for that question because my first time playing against this guy was just the other day, and I think he's a really good player. Pat Surtain, he's a solid guy. He's a young player. I want to say it's his second year, but I can tell you he knows exactly what he's doing. He puts a lot into it. So that was a fun matchup, and I look forward to the rest of them.
Of course, Davante Adams is brought to us by Tide, and we're getting into why you need to wash that lucky jersey of yours. But before we do, Davante, these last couple rookie wide receiving classes have just been loaded. When you talk about, you brought up Justin Jefferson, there's Jamar Chase, you have Jahan Dotson and Drake London and Chris Olave, and the list goes on and on and on and on. If you look at these young receivers that have come out in the last couple of years, who stands out for you? Who do you think is the guy that has the best chance to be elite?
I mean, you got to go with Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, those LSU boys, just all the LSU boys, they come in the league ready to play at a different level than a lot of other guys. When I was that age, I couldn't touch those guys as far as what they're accomplishing right now. So I got a lot of respect for what they're doing.
How much do you think it helps? And you've obviously been in this situation, being with Aaron forever, knowing Derek forever. How much does it help Jamar Chase to have that connection with Joe Burrow going back to LSU and now getting to build on it in Cincy?
It helps him a lot. I'm sure it's not like if he had a different quarterback or if Joe wasn't in there, he wouldn't be able to make it happen. I definitely think he'd be able to do it. But when you got a good friend at quarterback and you got somebody that you know and you've been around and spent time with, off the field a lot, and in school especially, you learn a lot about a guy there. So I think that helps the connection, helps just the mental. Obviously it makes you think about your receiver a little bit more than if it was just any other guy. So that connection is pretty deadly, and I think it's just going to continue to get worse as we move forward.
No doubt. Now, Davante, you've partnered with Tide, and I know you're trying to bust the myth that lucky jerseys don't need to be washed. So how do fans wash their lucky jerseys and keep all the good juju intact and not risk turning it into just another jersey they wear on a Wednesday versus the one they wear on game day?
Well, I mean, you got to start with what you're washing it with. And when you use Tide, that's exactly, I mean, it's science. It's a science in it that you use Tide to wash the stuff. All you're doing is cleaning the jersey and you're keeping all the rest of the sentimental and the superstitious and all that stuff intact. So, I was the same way. I had a lucky jersey when I was, in middle school, and it was a white jersey, and it actually ended up being getting pretty dirty. And
who was the jersey? Was it yours or was it a favorite player? Whose jersey was it?
No. This was a Tim Brown jersey.
Ah, beautiful.
Tim Brown jersey, and had to wash it, of course, with Tide. That goes without saying. And it was a little bit of a weird adjustment for me because I had never watched it before that, and I had it for years. But once I did that, I felt great about it, and it was certainly lucky, but it was also dirty. So it was something that needed to be done.
And do you have a go-to Tide? What should people be looking for on the shelves to wash that lucky jersey with?
You got to go with the hygienic pods. That's the only way to go.
Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, so we know about the Tim Brown jersey, and you're now fortunate enough to be playing for the Raiders, kind of following in Tim Brown's footsteps in a lot of ways, right? What were the superstitions of yours? What's your game day superstition that got you here? What do you still need to do on game day? Tell the world Davante Adams' game day superstitions. Would love to hear them.
I got nothing too crazy, but I do eat the same thing every game day. And it has to correspond with if it's a night game or a morning game. If it's an early game, then obviously it's going to be a breakfast thing, and I usually keep it to the same scramble every time with some toast and a crown apple. And then if we have a night game, prime time, typically I go for my salmon salad, which I started years ago, had a big game, and then just kind of kept that rolling. So those are my two. I guess I also wear the same thing every single game in the game. My wristband on my left arm, just a little above the left wrist. Same socks and of course my Jordan swag and my swag rag as well. You see the towel on the left side. So pretty consistent with what I wear and what I eat.
All washed with Tide, I assume? All of it?
Oh, of course. Even though
Beautiful.
it's a new wristband, it completes every game, but when they do get washed, it's certainly Tide, sir.
He's Davante Adams, all-pro wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. He joined us on behalf of Tide with the message to wash those lucky jerseys. Davante, appreciate the time, my man. Look forward to talking to you further up the road. Best of luck the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Really great conversation there with Davante Adams. And I thought really insightful as well that it was a captain's meeting where Davante stepped up and they admitted to calling out some lack of accountability and what they needed to do to turn the season around, as they did on Sunday against their division rivals, the Denver Broncos. A big win for the Raiders that desperately needed it. That was a team that entered the season legitimately thinking Super Bowl. You talk to Raiders fans, you talk to people inside the league after everything they did over the course of this offseason, trading for Khalil Mack and dropping him opposite of Max Crosby on that defense, bringing in Adams, kind of one of the biggest moves at the wide receiver position that anybody had made across the league, pairing him with Derek Carr. We talked a little bit about Mack Hollins and what he's brought to the table. There's so much talent there that they were really underperforming in the first 3 weeks of the season. They might have just turned it around. They might have just figured it out. They might just have the spark now to launch into the second half of the season in a division where on paper we talked about it all offseason, right? We talked about Justin Herbert and the Chargers maybe closing the gap on the Chiefs. They're now snake bitten by injuries as the Chargers have seemed to be over the last 5, 10, 15 years as a franchise. I think the Chiefs, will get into them a little bit later on in a big way. I think they found their way in a big game in a monster setting against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers on Sunday night. And the Broncos kind of are what they are. But the point being, everybody thought going into this year that the AFC West was going to be the most dominant division in football, that there was a chance that they could send 3 teams to the NFL playoffs. All 4 teams have kind of underachieved at various points. And we're only now 4 weeks into a 17-game schedule. There's time for Adams and the Raiders to turn it around. But when I think of the Super Bowl coming up this year, and there's a lot of football still to be played, there are a lot of variables still to be taken into account. But when I look at the NFL right now, today, we're recording this on Tuesday, October 4th, 4 weeks into the year, there are 2 teams, in my opinion, that really seem like they're on a collision course to meet in the Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona in February. And those 2 teams are the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills. They have the best rosters. You look at what Brandon Beane has been able to do in Buffalo. You look at what Howie Roseman has done, not just this offseason, but last offseason, and the moves that they have made. You look at these two rosters, they are the deepest rosters, the most talented rosters, top to bottom on both sides of the ball. And they have built teams around two quarterbacks that are playing some of the best quarterback of their career. They're the driving forces of their teams. They're getting everything that you would expect out of a franchise quarterback in Josh Allen in Buffalo. And Jalen Hurts has really rounded a corner, turned a corner into that type of a role in Philadelphia. And they've built weapons all over the place. You look at the Bills, and you can rattle the names off the top of your head when you think about guys like Stephon Diggs. Gabriel Davis has developed into a household name. Isaiah McKenzie is an elite weapon who would probably be a top 2 receiver on most teams across the NFL. He's your slot guy. You have a stable of really great running backs, a really good offensive line. And in Philadelphia, of course, you look at what Howie Roseman did this offseason, pulling off perhaps the biggest heist in the NFL this offseason on draft night, trading for A.J. Brown, giving Jalen Hurts a second deep threat, a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL, one of the biggest matchup nightmares in the NFL, weapons all over the place. And we saw last year with the Eagles turning their season around, making the postseason after a second half run, largely behind the number 1 rated rushing offense in the NFL. We've seen that the Eagles are at their best when they're a ground and pound running team that sets up the pass. And I wrote about this on Monday in First and 10. Go check it out on heavy.com. That Nick Sirianni turned a corner against the Jacksonville Jaguars, falling behind 14-0. The passing game wasn't working. The pressure was getting to Hurts. So what do? They commit to the run, and they run the Jaguars out of the building. So there's talent on both of these offenses. But on defense, I don't think people going into this season talked enough about what the Eagles did on defense, bringing in Kazir White at middle linebacker, a veteran presence, a thumper who's always around the football, a leader. Hassan Reddick coming home to Philadelphia as a dominant presence on the edge. You draft Jordan Davis, who's getting better every week, by the way, who not only can be an interior pass rusher, but an elite run stopper against the likes of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott in the division. And there's a parallel here. When you look at all the talent in Buffalo, you go out and you trade for future Hall of Famer. You sign him as a free agent. You sign future Hall of Famer Von Miller, fresh off a Super Bowl. And you round out one of the top 3 or 4 front sevens in football. That's the winning formula. Dominant playmakers around a potential franchise quarterback and a defense that can play at a championship level every single week. Both the Eagles and the Bills now have that. And because quarterback is the most important position in all of sports, because that matters most, getting high-level, dominant play out of the quarterback position, a couple things really jumped out at me here. When you look at total offense, Jalen Hurts is on pace to break the quarterback record in the history of the league for total offense in a season. Josh Allen is second. Jalen Hurts is on pace for 17 rushing touchdowns. And Hurts, by the way, has gotten a lot smarter about picking his spots, where to run, when to get down, when to get out of bounds, when to avoid the hard hit. He's on pace for 17 rushing scores, and the record is held by Cam Newton, who had 14. Oh, by the way, Josh Allen, one of the more physically imposing quarterbacks in the league, who is no slouch as a runner himself, he's on pace for 9 touchdowns. So you have all these weapons around your quarterback. You have 2 great offensive lines. The Eagles might have the best offensive line in football. And you have 2 quarterbacks who, when you have to tuck it under and run, they can do it at an elite level. These are 2 really dominant rosters, and it would not surprise me in the least if they are the battle-tested teams that wind up playing in the Super Bowl in February. And you talk about the quarterback position, and you talk about the young quarterbacks around this league. And a guy that jumps to mind for me, whose team is just absolutely failing him, has failed him since his arrival. And you look at what they did and didn't do this offseason that has set him up really to fail and in a lot of ways could set back the organization. That's Justin Fields in Chicago. And, you know, I watch a lot of Big Ten football. If you followed my career, if you follow me on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL, you know, I'm a Penn State football season ticket holder, so I've watched a lot of Big Ten games. I've watched a lot of Ohio State, Penn State games over the years. Justin Fields looked like the real deal at Ohio State, and he was dialed in, and it's easy to look good at Ohio State when you have top 2 offensive line in the country, top 2 wide receiver core in the country, every single year churning them out, playing for a guy like Ryan Day. It's easy to look elite there, right? But he had all the skill set. He had all the traits, and he deserved to be a top 15 pick in the draft. The Bears went up and got him in that trade with the New York Giants. But now that they have Justin Fields, the Bears need to help him. The Bears need to do something to help Justin Fields. I don't know if it's whether you have to change the play caller. I don't know if every single week you look at Ryan Poles, the general manager, and Matt Eberflus, the head coach. I don't know if every Sunday night on the team plane coming back from a road game or stepping into the office after a home game, every single week, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus should be scouring the waiver wire, working their contacts. They should be working out young receivers every single week. I know Darnell Mooney is there. I know that they have injuries. I know that they're banged up. But I watched this team, and I saw them Sunday against the Giants, saw them against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau on Sunday Night Football. It's the most one-dimensional offense in the league. They have a great running back in Khalil Herbert, and that's great. It's all well and good. They can run block. Fantastic. But you're letting your young quarterback down in a big way. Now, I don't know if the answer is someone like Austin Mack, former Giants wide receiver who can contribute on special teams, who this preseason led the NFL in receptions and receiving yards, is a little bit of a field stretcher. I don't know if Austin Mack is the answer there. He should be working out in Chicago. They should kick the tires. I talk to people all the time. Austin Mack isn't getting a lot of buzz. He should. He's good enough to be on a roster, good enough to be on a practice squad. He'd make the Bears better. I don't know if it's John Ross, who you want to talk about deep threats. You want to talk about speed. John Ross set the record for the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. No, I know that was 5, 6, 7 years ago, but he can still, when healthy, he can still be a contributor. Travis Benjamin is another guy. Speed to be a deep threat. Consistent return option. You look at them having their return, Jakeem Grant, on the shelf as a returner. Travis Benjamin checks that box. Travis Benjamin is a veteran receiver that would step into a young room and add experience, speed, and field stretching upside for sure. And I think what was the tipping point for me, and I've written about this a couple of times when it comes to Justin Fields and the Bears really letting him down. The tipping point for me was going back and rewatching that game on Monday afternoon. And there were a couple of really nice deep balls from Justin Fields. You know, he's at his best when you can stretch the field with a guy like Mack, with a guy like John Ross. Darnell Mooney pulled down a great ball over the middle of the field by Justin Fields on Sunday against the Giants. But the Bears have to realize something here. Odell Beckham Jr. isn't walking through that door. Odell Beckham Jr. isn't going to solve your problems. He's not going to Chicago. You talk to people around the NFL, you talk to people close to Odell Beckham Jr., he's only going to a place where he can catch a lot of passes from an elite quarterback and have a chance to win. Well, I don't know if you have much of a chance to win with the Bears. You're going to catch a lot of balls, sure, but I don't know that Justin Fields is that elite quarterback. And he's certainly not going to be enough to overcome the other boxes that Odell Beckham Jr. hopes to check going to his next destination. But people inside the league continue to stress to me every time I bring it up, whether it's agents, whether it's scouts, whether it's a general manager who I talk to every week, whoever it is, they keep stressing the Bears need to do something, that Chicago desperately needs offensive line help, young wide receivers, something to help Justin Fields, to help spark this offense. And I think what really jumped out in that Giant game that I mentioned earlier, there was a play where Justin Fields didn't have any pressure in the pocket. It was a clear pocket. Dexter Lawrence, the big space eater, the big 6'8", 340 whatever pound nose tackle, Dexter Lawrence, who's just a game wrecker on the inside, he was being double teamed. But you saw him kind of flash at the snap that he could be coming up the middle. And Justin Fields scrambled out of a clean pocket and was nearly sacked, nearly ran himself into a sack. That's the sign of a young quarterback who doesn't trust his offensive line. That's the sign of a young quarterback who's trying to do too much, who knows he doesn't have enough help at the skill positions to be able to make a play on schedule with the play. They have to figure it out. They have to do something. They have to get Justin Fields some help, if for no other reason, not only to help him resurrect his career and turn it around, but because they need to know. Ryan Poles wasn't the GM who drafted Justin Fields. Matt Eberflus wasn't the head coach who identified and drafted Justin Fields. They need to find out if Justin Fields is their guy. Point blank, that's the bottom line here. The Bears, for the sake of their franchise, need to find out if Justin Fields is their franchise quarterback. And if he's not, well, they need to look in another direction, because you're not going to win championships with the roster around that quarterback. Now, a team that has a real chance to win a Super Bowl, and I didn't think that they were even in the conversation 2 weeks ago. I certainly didn't think they were in the conversation when Trey Lance got hurt, but that's the San Francisco 49ers. Did you see that game on Monday night? If you watched what DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinator, put together as a game plan, and I have much more about this in my weekly Wednesday column, In the Trenches on Heavy.com. Be sure you check it out. But that game plan from DeMeco Ryans, if that was a playoff game, if that were a Super Bowl, you'd put that game plan in the Hall of Fame. It would be right there next to Bill Belichick's defensive game plan from when the Giants beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. Because what he did to Matthew Stafford, what DeMeco Ryans did to Matthew Stafford, had him seeing ghosts, had him feeling pressure that wasn't there by gaming Nick Bosa up the middle, sending your edge rushers up the middle, your nose tackles off the edge. It looked like you were seeing pressure from all angles. And Matthew Stafford didn't even see it coming. And it was capped off by Niners safety Tanulona Hofanga returning an interception 52 yards for a touchdown, and the Niners running away with a 24-9 win. A statement. It was an ass-kicking against the Rams, a division rival who won a Super Bowl 10 months ago, whatever it was, 9 months ago. They didn't look like they belonged on the same field as that defense. And, that's an offense with Matthew Stafford, with Darrell Henderson, with Cam Akers, with Cooper Kupp. You heard Davante Adams, maybe the best route runner in the NFL, Cooper Kupp. Allen Robinson, all of these guys. I know the offensive line is banged up. I get it. You need continuity to form an offensive line. The Rams don't have it now. But the Niners went in and punched them in the mouth. They looked like the team to be. They looked like two teams headed in the opposite direction. And I think that what you saw was one of the more impressive things that we've seen, certainly this week, but maybe over the course of the season. And, I spoke to DeMeco Ryans, his former teammate with the Philadelphia Eagles. I covered DeMeco Ryans when he was in Philadelphia. Great guy, great leader. It's no surprise to me that the Niners are playing their asses off for him, that they're bought in. I spoke to Nolan Carroll, who was also on those Eagles teams. Got to know him a little bit back then, but I spoke to him Tuesday, and he told me flat out, if the 49ers keep this up, DeMeco Ryans is going to be a head coach this offseason. And he should be. He absolutely should be. Checks all the boxes. Great leader, obviously a tactician, obviously can draw up an elite, dominant game plan for his defense. I know he has Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and all that talent, but he maximized them. And the 49ers, they're going to need to win with their defense, because I think that Jimmy Garoppolo is good enough to keep them afloat. I think that he's good enough to be a game manager, maybe a little bit more than that. When they get healthy at running back, that'll certainly help. But they're going to need to win with defense. And if they do, if Ryans can continue to scheme up this kind of relentless pressure, they're going to be a really, really, really tough out. You want to talk about tough outs? Let's go to the Lombardo Trophy. Let's cue that up. How about that as a tough out? Going to the Lombardo Trophy, and it's a team that has a Lombardi Trophy in their trophy case. Each week, we're going to award the Lombardo Trophy to the team or the unit or the position group that made the biggest statement of the prior weekend. And sitting around watching all the games on Sunday, it was crazy to watch all the comebacks. 14 teams came back from 2 scores down. Something like 6 more teams came down from 10 points down. Just a crazy day, as NFL Sundays tend to be. But what we witnessed in Tampa Bay, from the moment that Patrick Mahomes ran onto the field after introductions, you could tell he had that look in his eye. You could tell that he was out for revenge and that this game was personal to him against Tom Brady and the team that embarrassed him in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 55. You could tell that he was out to extract some revenge there. And he got it in a big way. In a big way. You look at what they did. coming off the week they had prior, where you had the turnovers, the shoddy special teams play, the mistakes, Mahomes losing for the first time when he was blitzed more than 12 times in a game, the argument near the tunnel between Patrick Mahomes and offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, all of those things that happened in Indy. Well, they made a statement against the Buccaneers, and that's just not another team. That's one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the NFC. That's Tom Brady on the other side. That's Tom Brady who ran Patrick Mahomes out of the building in the Super Bowl. That's Todd Bowles who drew up a magnum opus of a game plan in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. And he lit him up. He lit him up on Sunday night. I mean, it felt like that was their Super Bowl. For any other team, you look at what Miami did, holding on, and that it took everything they had to beat the Bills a couple of weeks ago. That was the Dolphins Super Bowl, right? This felt like the Chiefs' regular season Super Bowl, but they're a team that's battle-tested. They're a team that knows how to win big games in the biggest spots in the postseason. And, you look at what they were able to do when Mahomes and Travis Kelce are on the same page, when they're on a mission, they might be the most dominant duo in the NFL, pass catcher and quarterback, full stop, most dominant out there. I don't know if there's a better one. They were in lockstep against the Buccaneers and a really good secondary. And I get it that Julio Jones wasn't quite 100% even though he played. I know Chris Godwin went down again in that game. I know that the Buccaneers are banged up. I know their offensive line has been beaten and battered and bruised and knocked around ever since training camp. But Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, he absolutely emptied the clip at Brady. And that was one of the few times where Brady looked rattled in a game that I remember watching. You look at the hit where he, got ridden to the ground, banged his shoulder. I think that had an impact late, but just couldn't really get it going, Tom Brady, in that game. So I look at what they did on defense. I look at Mahomes bouncing back in a big way. He threw for 249 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. And how many of those plays, tell on yourself a little bit here. How many of those plays did you watch and you thought, man, he's down. That's a big loss. That's a sack. And you're like, oh my God, how did he make that throw? Oh my God, how did he break loose from that? The scramble along the goal line where it looked like he was going to be, knocked to the ground by his knees and he flipped it into the end zone for the touchdown. The throw to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There were so many Patrick Mahomes moments that you're going to cut up a Patrick Mahomes highlight reel in 20 years at his Hall of Fame introduction ceremony as a first ballot Hall of Famer. There were a lot of plays where you could say, all right, that's going on the reel. I know it's only week 4 of the 2022's regular season, but in 20 years, that's going on the reel. That to me is what was most impressive. Answering the bell, answering the call. And when I look at that team and when they're at their best, it's when Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid are at their best. Andy Reid, to me, I don't know that there's a more innovative play designer. There might be better play callers because I think that Andy Reid at times gets away from the running game. I think Andy Reid at times, look at what happened in the AFC Championship game against the Bengals last year. I think there are times where these guys kind of go through a brain fog moment. But I think as far as designing plays and trick plays and figuring out when to use them, there might not be anybody better than Andy Reid. And you saw the direct snap to the tight end on the quarterback sneak for a touchdown. You saw the Philly special like play towards midfield. Andy Reid had it going. That might have been the Chiefs Super Bowl. I think they're very much in the mix for the Lombardo Trophy. I think that they're a top 2, top 3 team in the AFC right there with the Buffalo Bills. Look out for the Bengals, who, by the way, only face the 8th hardest schedule according to Tankathon the rest of the way. So the Bengals and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're for real. Look out. They're starting to heat up. But the Chiefs are in the mix for the Lombardo Trophy. They take home the Lombardo Trophy, the inaugural Lombardo Trophy. We might as well call it the Mahomes Trophy from here on out. But the Lombardo Trophy from episode 1 of the podcast goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. So before I look too far ahead to the postseason, before we get into everything that might be coming down the line, each and every week we're going to throw out our pick of the week. We're going to make our selection for the upcoming Sunday slate, Thursday night game included, of course, Monday night game in the mix as well. We're going to give you our pick against the spread. We're going for covers here. We're not going for wins. We're going for covers. And the pick of the week this week, I'm going back to my old beat. They're right there. Covered the Giants for a couple of years. NJ.com, couple outlets, made my way over to Heavy as the NFL insider. We're going to the Giants for the pick of the week this week in London against the Green Bay Packers. They're getting 8.5 points. 8.5. If you watch the Packers, look, I love what they've built in Green Bay now. I think that there were some early growing pains. There's going to be more growing pains around rookies. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs at wide receiver. Aaron Jones is legit, right? He's explosive. Top 4 running back in the league, top 3 quarterback in the league, defense top 5, pass rushers off the charts, great secondary, all that. Bailey Zappi took them to overtime. A 4th-round rookie quarterback took Aaron Rodgers to the brink and nearly beat them in Lambeau. I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of preseason hype about the Packers being a team to beat in the NFC. I think they're one of the top 3 teams in the conference. Sure, certainly. I was wrong about the Giants going in. Way wrong. I had them as a 3-win team. People were out for blood on Twitter, at Matt Lombardo NFL, by the way. People were out for blood on Twitter for my Giants pick. I was wrong. Put the pitchforks away. Put the pitchforks away. Brian Dable has them bought in. They've won close games. They're battle-tested. Not only does Saquon Barkley lead the league in rushing yards, he looks explosive as ever, healthy as ever. He's a more patient runner. He gets in and out of his cuts quicker. Secondary is playing a little bit over its head. I get that. It might be Thomas Darrow, my producer, might play quarterback for them on Sunday. He might suit up. I hear Darrow has an arm. But you look at Jake Fromm potentially working out. You look at AJ McCarron potentially working out for the Giants. Daniel Jones is hurt, might not play. Tyrod Taylor in concussion protocol, not going to play. And scary, strange things happen in London. You saw it Sunday. You saw it Sunday in that Saints game. If Will Lutz, as money as they come as kicker, double doink, game over, Vikings go home a winner, even though they have such a shoddy offensive line. I think the offensive line is going to let the Vikings down this year in a big way and really sabotage their opportunity in the NFC North. But I think the Packers are a little bit vulnerable. Strange things happen in London. And the Giants' formula of playing great defense up front and running the ball, pounding you into submission with Saquon Barkley, I think that travels. I think it travels overseas. And I think the Giants in London take care of business. They cover the 8.5 at least against the Green Bay Packers. So that's my pick of the week. Really fun show. Hope you enjoyed it. It's really great to be back hosting the Matt Lombardo Show. Couldn't be more thrilled to be here at Heavy. Thomas Darrow, outstanding producer behind the scenes. You can follow me on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL. Be sure to follow Heavy at Heavy on Sports on Twitter as well. And if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy the podcast, please do us a favor. Please go ahead and subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker. Throw us a like on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this one, if you enjoyed the Davante Adams interview, if you like the analysis, the insight, do me a favor, leave a 5-star review. Let me know what you liked about the podcast. Let me know some areas you'd want to improve, some segment ideas, some guests you might want to have me try to get on. Leave those 5-star reviews, subscribe, like them, all of those things. They help grow the show. But you can check me out next week, same time, same place. I'm Matt Lombardo, Heavy's NFL insider. Great games coming up this weekend. Thanks to Davante Adams. Thanks to Thomas Darrow. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. I'll talk to you next week right here on the Matt Lombardo Show presented by Heavy Sports.